Today I'm going to show you how you can take an example question of the workflow you want to do and work at it bit by bit, and how you separate the different steps and items and do what I call a building block on your way towards a better workflow. So this actually started out as a Reddit posting where Dale asked and says, I have a list of dates for people with certificates, and this is what his list looked like. In the front there would be names, and I want to see and write an email for each and every single one of them, which is due inside of 30 days. So he said send an email 30 days before date and sell. And I started answering him and also provided him with some solution, but it turned out that the core problem actually was the way his data is structured, and also that it's a multi-step process. So what you do in this case is you tackle it bit by bit. And one of the things you can do rather quickly is, for example, have a look at his current setup. His setup is names, dates, and the certificates, and while it looks nicely and maybe you can even use the filter function to do some filtering, it's overall the wrong type of data. This is what I call a pretty output. And pretty outputs are great, but they should never be the thing from which you create all of your other output. It is what you create. It is not where you enter data, because there's so much missing. And it's quite easy to go to a real data table, which for example has employee numbers, also the names, and every one of the certificates. If you scroll down, it's basically just the same data going from here to here. And if you want to see a video on how to come from here to this type of data, let me know in the comments. There are different ways to do that reliably. But once you have this type of data, you could, for example, do a pivot table and recreate this output inside of a minute. But what we want to do in this specific case is we want to figure out which of these certificates are due in the next let's say few months. And while you could look manually at it, what he wanted to do is actually create an email list. And Excel has an interesting feature which you can use here, and that's the advanced filter. And you always have your data, and you keep your data clean. You never touch the data, you only enter and update it, and all output you do in different sheets. That's rule number one. And I made a sheet here, and the name is probably not the best, data autofilter, but this is basically the copy of the data I had before. And what I can use is a advanced data filter, which is available in, I have a Excel 2019, I think, but it was also available in earlier versions. You don't need a 365 or anything like it. What it actually does, it's going to take my criteria, which I have over here, intentionally put to the side, and it will allow me to filter data automatically. And I'm taking Dale's request to say I have today's data. That's a formula, and every time I'm going to open up this worksheet, it's going to automatically update. I want to have a certain amount of days, and my goal date is actually just the date plus the days. And down here I have replicated exactly the headers, and here I have entered my criteria. And as you may know, Excel internally treats this as a number, and so this would be the correct criteria for that. And what you're going to do, and as with any type of workflow, first you go through manually. And in this case, I want to check. I've done this a few times now, so I have put enough space in here. If this was a bigger list, I would actually have this area in the front, because you can always easily hide something in the front, and then you have space to fill out the rest in here. So I'm going to go here and say Data, Advanced Filter, and I'm going to select my list, and it needs to have my header in the first line. And by choosing all of the columns, every time I'm going to update this is going to take all of the data, and I need to make sure to say copy to another location. Then it's asked me where my criteria is. I'm going to mark this, and then where I want to copy it to, and I'm going to say G1, and then I say OK, and as you can see, it just filters it out. And let's say I want to do 120 days. I do the same, different area, output. It's going to make a longer list, And so 30 again, advanced, copy to different. Perfect. So by setting this up and making sure that it's in a way that I actually can just update it, it's pretty great because it's going to update every single time. But let's say this is not the best way to have a template for running a mail merge, and I want to have additional data. I've made a new sheet over here, and this is again the reason why I like to have full columns. If I pray copy, I can just go in here and press Control V. I don't care about the formatting. And for example, I might be able to pull in additional information. I might write additional lines or do stuff with it. I have named it specifically mail, because now if I want to run my workflow for creating a mail merge, I absolutely know I have this specific sheet, and this sheet is exactly what I need to do my workflow. It may look in the beginning to having so many sheets, but if you think about it, I call it downstream. I have data, and this data flows downstream into this one, and from here it flows into this one. And I'm never going to change anything in here. I'm only going to change data in here. So once I have that, I can take it now. But this is where the macro comes in, because every single time I'm going to update this, what I need to be doing is marking this. I'm going to delete all of this, go over here to make sure. I would also delete it here. And those are steps I can do manually, but this is what macros were made for. This is why you record macros, and it's really simple also to test it. You start with and this is the reason this is all built in this specific way. It's made so I can use a macro later to save me the work, because when I actually want to run this, I want to go into the data sheet, I want to take all of this, I want to update the data here, I want to run the advanced filter, and I want to update my mail sheet. So that's what I'm going to be doing, and you need to have developer available. You can Google that, and then you have down here this little icon and say record macro. I like to keep all of my macros in my personal workbook for some reasons, but we're going to do it in this specific workbook. Oh yes, the main reason is because if you save a macro inside of a workbook, it has a different ending, which sometimes makes difficulties, and I found it easier just to have everything in my personal workbook, but we'll do it here. Just record it. And now we need to think about what we are going to do every single time. We're going to go to this specific sheet. We're going to mark this. We're going to empty it. I just pressed delete. I'm going to this sheet. Also here, pressing delete. Then I'm going to go to my data sheet. I'm going to mark everything. I'm going to press Control C for copy. I'm going to go here and press Control V. It's going to update everything. Once that is done, I'm going to go into Data, Advanced, and now it's going to fill out this specific thing. As you can see, I would have to adapt it for the employee number, but let's keep this one here. I click copy into another place. My criteria range is correct. Copy to, just make it easier. Click OK. And now I have my result list. I'm going to copy everything, going into mail, going into F1, pressing Ctrl V, and I'm done. Now I'm going to stop my macro. And what you are going to do now is actually to check if it works. And for that, you're going into your VBA. You press Alt F11 to open it up, and then you find your workbook, you find your modules. It's called module 1, and if you work longer in it, you can give a new name down here, but just leave it be. So in this case, in order to run it, you need to have this sheet, this workbook open. And once I'm sure my macro actually works, I'm going to add a big button over here, which I then can just press to have it run. You're going back to your VBA, and this is everything the system has recorded step by step, every click you've done. And the easiest way to check if what you've done is actually correct is to start someplace else, because this is usually what you would be doing. You open it up, you are somewhere, and now we're going back here, and you're going to press F8. And what F8 is going to do is going to run through step by step. It's not listed in here for some reason. The other ones are F5 and F9, and you can I can make a video about all these little steps, but for the moment just press F8, and it's going to start you and it's going to select a sheet. And this is why it's important that you name your sheets before you record the macro, because if you rename it you have to update this, but we're staying simple. Pressing F8, it goes to the sheet, making it like this. It's going to and while this is running through, I can go other places because it's going through step by step. It's going to mark everything, it's going to clear the content, it's going to my sheet, it's going to select, it's going to clear the content, going to data, selecting the columns, and let's just again click somewhere, press F8, copy my selections, going back to the sheet, entering the data. These I always delete afterwards, running the auto filter, automatically filling, marking the columns, copy, go to mail, insert, and we are done. So my macro absolutely looks correct, and I can now assign it, and I can go up here and just rename it and do advanced filter. It just needs to be unique, and yes, it will reset my project. Once this is done, I can actually just close it, and then for the fitting place I would insert an icon, and I can assign a macro to that, and now it's going to all open workbooks, do advanced filter, and now if I click this, it's going to run all of the macro. And this way you can automate part of your process. Now this button is nice, but if you reopen your file after a while, you might not really know what you're doing, so it would make sense, for example, to maybe write down here a short description what this macro actually does. Now back to his problem. This is not sending emails, but it's preparing your data in a way that you are actually able to prepare a building block. Another building block, what you also could do, for example, is to go more advanced with your macro recorder, is not to copy and paste it into this file, but create a completely new file. You could, for example, take this specific thing and record a macro for move and copy, make it into a new book, move it over there, and then from here on out name it differently, name it automatically. These are all building blocks which you can use later in your VBA macro. And when I said we are not VBA programmers, this is what I actually mean. You're going to record everything. Like for example, save this under a new name in a specific directory. You're going to record that, and then you're going to adapt by searching on Google how to do that, the specific entries to fulfill your needs. I hope this was helpful for you, and happy